Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I watched what was left, the last two episodes of Zero Day. I'm going to finish this video here. Got some sort of epic comment video stuff. Already did the voiceovers for that. Going to get into a little bit of Trump stuff and a little bit of Elon Musk stuff, and Alec Baldwin spazzed out again. And we'll get into that. So we'll get to all that in a moment. But the show Zero Day totally delivered. I have less clips, thankfully, to go through. If there's no ads, this is going to be just a donation based video. This is the third in the series. So if the other two videos are, the first one was entitled, let me go pull out my other thing here. The other one was entitled, it's not here. I haven't uploaded it yet because here it is. There we go there. So it was called F you Nutflix and your anti-truther zero day. And then the most flagrant truther bashing, 0 day something. The rest of the title here. Bashing TV shows of all time. Nutflix is 0 day. So those are the first two. I'm not sure what I'm going to entitle this one. But it clearly delivers in terms of the truther bashing and being a truther and posting information online to be blamed for everything. They literally blame it for everything multiple times in the last episode. And there is a conspiracy, a governmental deep state type conspiracy. Again, I don't believe in the deep state stuff, my position on that. But, that's what they put out there. So it was a deep state conspiracy, even though they bashed conspiracy theorists throughout the show, even all the way to the end. So let's get into it here.
Evan Green has been released, but he should never have been detained.
So this, fake truther character, loosely based on Alex Jones, is released and he disappears. Like they show him going to the car, and he's done. There's another news report here.
That enhanced interrogation techniques were used on television personality Evan Green.
Okay, so they used Nicole Wallace twice and Wolf Blitzer twice, and they also used the woman Savannah Guthrie from the Today Show. And I've said this before. When you, as a so-called journalist, of course these people aren't journalists, obviously, but if you're a real journalist, you would never be in a movie pretending to do your job. And I talked about this on a subconscious level. But even on a conscious level, you are now an actor. There's going to be a credit for what you're doing here at IMBD. You have a role in this movie, and you're playing yourself. And so if you're basically saying that you will read fake news for a movie, which means that you're willing to do that, right? You're willing to act like you're presenting news that's real when it's fake. So all these, and Wolf Blitzer, he's been in probably, I would say 5 or 6 of these. It's always like disaster movies and shit like that. And so there's levels of subconscious when you see these people who are supposed to be the people you get your news from. I mean, not anymore so much, but when this used to be a thing. And so you actually experience this as real, which you do anyway. You experience these shows as being real on some level because your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between illusionary things, right? Can't process the word no and fake and everything's truth, right? There's just everything that you see is truth. But the other piece is, they cover this guy Evan Green quite substantially, the mainstream media. And it was just so fucking silly, right? Because they would never cover a truther like this. We know Nicole Wallace. I mean, they're all bad. She's particularly bad. And they demonize these people. There's no way they'd be talking about enhanced interrogation techniques, right? And so then this character just disappears. And this guy, the Robert De Niro character, tortured people. He freaking tortured this guy. And it turned out the guy was uninvolved and was released. And everybody knows about it, right? And they're still letting him do his job for 2 more episodes. It's like 48 hours. He's tortured people and brought the wrong people in and arrested the wrong people. And they've given away, they've given this guy all this power to suspend people's habeas corpus, all their rights and all the things that, you're supposed to protect you from shit like this. And he's misused them, and he's, hallucinating and things. I mean, there's some evidence that the public knows that the guy might be having some dementia issues like Joe Biden, and they're still letting him go, right? There's no like, hey, we better reel this thing in, right? Like they're talking about it, but they're just letting the guy, you know. And it's because it's a truther, it's okay. People don't care, except as this guy's audience. And so that was pretty effed up. So this is the tech billionaire autistic woman who's running one of these tech companies that has various apps that are on everybody's phone. And she tried to volunteer to help, even though she's been indicted and is, under government investigation. She volunteered to help, and then she started to spread information that was detrimental to this whole thing, and they tried to pull her in. And so the guy who was his, his daughter's boyfriend and his original chief of staff, the guy from Friday Night Lights, who committed suicide or was suicided already. He was suicided, left a note in the back of this guy's diary, Robert De Niro's diary, and explained all the stuff he had learned from the shortwave radio. And from that, they were able to make contact with these people and arrest one of them, and he worked for this woman, so they went to get her, and she said she would out this Robert De Niro and his chief of staff, the woman from Friday Night Lights, if about their illegitimate child, if she didn't get immunity. And she was going to testify because all these guys were bailing on her. And there was a firefight because these guys showed up at her house who were supposed to defend her. They all got killed, but the rest of the people bailed on her. And she was going to tell on all these people, but somehow she was Jeffrey Epstein. So this is another, these major conspiracy type of things that we believe in, that people are suicided, are Jeffrey Epstein. And two people were Jeffrey Epstein. So, all this stuff about you guys are wrong for believing in conspiracy theories and talking about them. But we're going to have all these conspiracies and all the shit that you believe in we're going to put in this show, right? Like we're going to get really preachy about how bad you suck. And then we're going to make our whole plot about things you guys believe and have exposed on the internets.
And if you're worried about the death of a autistic sociopath.
So this is his daughter. This is Robert De Niro's daughter. And it's exposed. It's now revealed that they killed this. She comes in and said, "Did we do this?" And Matthew Modine is running, at least in part, running this show, right? This whole thing. It was an inside government deep state job, they now reveal in the 5th episode, that this was done by them. And she's upset about it, and she was actually ends up being worried they're going to suicide her. But now it's known that Robert De Niro's daughter was involved in this thing. And this guy, Matthew Modine, he was a Secretary of State, so he's, Nancy Pelosi's job, and he's third in line to be the, the part of the, the president. But he also was going to take over Robert De Niro's job when they fire him. He's been advocating for him to be fired, and he would take over. So he'd be in charge of investigating this, this huge power grab where they've suspended people's rights. And he's the one that perpetrated this fraud. So it's a deep state conspiracy, right? So then he says, she did do the things that she's accused of. And then he says this.
The rest is becoming truth, and that's all that matters.
And then she says it's not the truth, right? But, what difference does that make? You were part of a huge governmental deep state conspiracy that your dad's investigating. So all the truthers in this show and all truthers are right? This is what they're saying. So you think they might back off the truther bashing, but they don't. That's coming up. They end this thing with truther bashing, and it's pretty much throughout. So, it's kind of great. So when you're watching a show like this, the perpetrators of the crime or the conspiracy or both, all these things, have to be some of the characters in it. So you get a sense, you're guessing which character. And so they give you the usual suspect, and sometimes it comes back around to that suspect. They try to throw you off, right? And this, trying to be, mysterious or whatever. But usually the first suspect, which was Russia, is going to not be the culprit. And then they give you little bits and pieces and clues and some red herrings. And then they come around and they tell you who is responsible. It was very clear Matthew Modine was going to be involved. The guy's daughter, a little bit of a surprise, but not really. Because, this is the whole conflict for Robert De Niro then becomes about, which we'll get into, when he finds out what's he going to do about his daughter, because he's supposed to be a man of truth. So is he going to choose his daughter over the truth? That becomes the whole conflict now. Like you can see, they've set this up, this internal dilemma, this moral dilemma for Robert De Niro.
The Bureau had been increasingly concerned about Kidder's radical rhetoric.
So Kidder is the woman, the CEO of the tech company. She's a kidder, and now she's hung. And so there's a scene right before this where Matthew Modine calls the FBI and tells them to say this exact sentences. It's kind of a great moment of truth in terms of like real, coverage of what happens, is that this guy's a villain, like this deep state villain. He tells the FBI what to say. They tell the mainstream media, and the mainstream media just regurgitates it verbatim, word for word. So they're just, this guy's the guy that perpetrated this horrendous, horrific act, and then he's telling the media what to say about it, which is a lot more realistic than all the other bullshit they talk about, how this truther is actually being taken seriously and being talked about in mainstream media and being shown as a victim, right? Because that shit would never happen. It's just totally unrealistic, but, this is the real stuff where the villains tell the media what to say and the media says it.
We had strong reason to believe the zero-day plot involved actors from inside the government.
So that's the director of the CIA, who seemed to be a bad guy at times, and he seemed to be involved in the plot. I think he was sitting in the room with the rest of these people. But what happened is they shut down the grid again, and his daughter was on the phone saying she's coming over to tell him some stuff. So she is, obviously going to confess, like he gets a sense of it. Him and his wife are at home, and the power grid goes off, and they're told they have to move because there's been chatter about a threat to them. And how would they even know that? Because they haven't been able to penetrate this group, this cabal of people. But all of a sudden they have intel about what they're going to do. And so they go to move them, and there's a crowd outside, and they have like Molotov cocktails, and they're all truthers who are pissed off that he tortured the guy. And they start storming the cars, and the CIA comes in and gets the guy. And the guy says on shortwave radio, "We got him." And so to calm down this group of people, these deep state people. And he then says, CIA had nothing to do with it, but they had everything to do with it because they created a bunch of these programs, and they were a part of it. Like it was all governmental stuff that fell into hands of other nefarious governmental people, and this tech woman. And she was able to, because she had all these apps on people's phones, put this code in there to turn off all the stuff in the grid and hack it. And that's how they were able to execute it. So the other thing is this guy reveals that the president and the CIA director knew or suspected these people and never told Robert De Niro. Even though he has all these rights and he's fumbling around in the dark and he's having dementia episodes, they had suspicions about these people. He's in this commission, and they don't tell him, like, yeah, we think it might be this guy and these other people. So meanwhile, he ends up torturing this truther guy and these other people, and it was all along they had almost nothing to do with it. The truther guy had nothing to do with it, and that other group of, so-called patriots had very little to do with it. And he was, they had knowledge, or at least they suspected that these guys were involved, and they don't tell the guy. It's so stupid.
If you can remind people what's really important, then maybe they'll tune out all the noise and the bullshit.
Okay, so this is where they start talking about their plot. And again, it's Truther's fault. The bullshit she's talking about is stuff the right wing and left wing believe, and, the division in the country, which is their fault. This is a divide and conquer mentality, which clearly everybody should know, like anybody with half a brain. But they're blaming people for being divided and that nothing's getting done. And so they thought if they could just scare people a little bit and, make them, not take all this stuff for granted, that they would come around and they'd be able to govern and do these things, right? And he's like, but it's not truth. It's not about truth. That's not truth. And this guy's, a walking lie. He's got all these lies, right? And, his daughter's confessing here. And again, they're blaming the truthers for this, and they're going to do it again. They're going to double down in the last episode.
With half the country caught up in a fever dream of lies and conspiracy, the other half shouting about pronouns.
So they're blaming the conspiracy theorists. This is a total conspiracy that, and then the left-wing people and all that stuff. They're blaming the radicalization and the division in the country for this act. They're in view of the Washington Monument. So they're in one of these monuments. This might be the Lincoln one of them. A very public place. And they're having this conversation where the guy is confessing what he did, why he did it, and that they had to do something. And, both his daughter and this guy are saying, you didn't do anything, and, you're just sitting on your hands. We had to take action. The country's falling apart. And so they're admitting that the country's about to go apocalyptic anyway, right? And, for them bashing truthers, when they've lied about these things, covered up all these things, well, let's get into the end here.
Not to mention that clowns like Evan Green, who dole out their poison online and on television.
Just to make a buck. They're poison, right? The truth is you guys murdered people, right? In this, they turned off all these things, all these phones, and took down the grid and scared the shit out of people, which led to all this panic and heartache and all these things. But he's the real problem, his poison. Again, blaming the truthers. And no matter how much it's deceptive and how much it's for profit and, how much someone like Alex Jones is a shill, it's still not as bad as all the shit you guys are doing on a daily basis. Not just here, but around the world, right? Putting, serving up pain and suffering around the fucking world, and you're still blaming the fucking truthers?
Because any other way, you're putting a rope around your daughter's neck.
How did Matthew Modine ever become a movie actor? He's horrible. And, this is the acting is going to be worse because the storyline's bad. This is just a shitty show. But, this is where the dilemma comes in. So this is the whole thing. They tried to make this guy be righteous, even though he's tortured people, that he was trying to do the right thing. He's always been trying to tell the truth. He loves the truth, and yet he hates truthers. And now he's in a position, does he save his daughter and, lie about this whole thing and just blame it on the woman that they suicided, which is what's on the table, and people are then start pressuring him to do that, or does he tell the truth to the American people?
I can't lose another child.
So that's his wife. She says, that they're the parents, so partly their daughter doing this bullshit is their fault as well, and she can't lose another child. So she's pressuring him, and she's a judge. She's looking to be like some high-ranking judge. She had to testify in front of this other prick, Matthew Modine, about what her husband was doing because she was going to apply for. He's being in the process. They're voting on her being one of these federal judges or something, maybe a Supreme Court. I don't even know. Fucking who gives a shit? Something. And she's supposed to be a judge, and she's saying, "Yeah, let's cover up for our daughter, right?"
People trust you to do the right thing. Whatever you say in that report will be the truth in their mind. So
this is the president, right? So this is the last episode. This is where the whole conflict has come. The whole show, all the bullshit comes down to whether this guy's going to, stick with his integrity or whether he's going to, lie about it to save his daughter. And she was trying to convince him that the truth isn't always what's best for the American people. I think there's another clip here. Let me see let me see that.
The public finds out how deep this really went right at this moment. I don't think we survived.
Okay, so she's saying that, and they all know this. They're all lying to people all the time, right? They have to. You have to lie to the American people because the American people are already rioting over the bullshit that's going on, the banks closing. They can't handle already what's happened. And then, the rest of these things. We know this because democracy is a fucking joke. And as politicians, they know. It's just silly. But, she's making this case, And then she goes on to saying, because he's like, but the truth's the truth. And she goes, you had an illegitimate daughter with your chief of staff, cheated on your wife, and your son died of a heroin overdose, and you blamed your quitting, not running for a second term on that because you didn't want to tell the American people the truth and go through that scandal. So you lied about that shit. And there's a girl that you've never met who's your daughter. But you're all of a sudden all about truth, right? And the guy has been a liar, and he's gone against his principles over and over again. And all of a sudden he's like all about the truth. It's great. So the guy's about to do his report, and he's been in charge of this debacle, and they've got all the wrong people, and it just was a mess. And he tortured people and all this shit, and he's been fumbling around, hallucinating, and he comes in, and they give him a round of applause, and he praises them for their work, right? And then he's got to deliver the speech. So originally he writes this report, and he gives it to this guy, Matthew Modine, and tells him, and Matthew Modine's all psyched because he's going to resign, and all the people who are involved are going to resign, and they're just not going to be outed. They're going to blame it all on this dead girl, this dead tech person. And Robert De Niro's going to go through with the lie. But right before he goes through with it, he gets a note from his daughter, and he reads the note, and he starts having these hallucinations. And the way they resolved the hallucinations was he's walking around his lake. He jogs a little bit, like old man jogging around his lake with his dog. And there's this bird feeder his wife had mentioned earlier. Oh, he never fills the bird feeder. It's like, all right, the bird feeder is going to be a part of it. And he looks in the bird feeder, and he pulls out a wire thing that he thinks is this Proteus thing that's been fucking with his mind, right? And that just disappeared. All his hallucinations disappeared after he found out about Proteus. And it was supposed to do permanent brain damage and, these energy weapons. And she, his chief of staff, the Connie Britton character, his former lover, she looks into it, and they can't tell whether it's part of it or not. It might be just like this random wire that ended up in their bird feeder. And they don't know whether he was actually messed with. It might be that he's just all stressed out, so his hallucinations are about that. And so he stops having them. And so then he's reading this speech, this fake speech, and he starts having this he starts glitching out. And he starts seeing his dead son, who, by the way, from my last video about this, I didn't mention this. He committed suicide. He was a heroin addict, and he took his life either suicidal or he OD'd in the White House when this guy was president, and the Secret Service had no idea this guy was using heroin, and nobody did. And Robert De Niro walked in his room and saw this band around his arm and saw that he was using heroin and still didn't do anything about it. Didn't say, hey, don't let heroin into the White House, right? Make sure my son doesn't get heroin to the Secret Service. But he sees his dead son, and he remembers the song, who killed Bambi by the Sex Pistols was playing when he walked in the room and found his son had OD'd, right? And so he's having this incongruity, just this all these things that are not really wrapped up and they have nothing to do with it, right? The whole, maybe there's people using this technology and they're just going to dismiss it all. Whether this, the guy himself had remembered the name of the Proteus thing and called the hacking thing Proteus, but it wasn't. And so they're just going to forget that this thing was the CIA had it, and now somebody else has it, and it could be being used on him and other people. And we're just going to pretend that doesn't exist. But his daughter gives him this note saying that she is going to turn herself in. And so he reads the note, and then he fingers this guy. And this guy says, oh, you just destroyed the country. And it's so silly, but he admits this is pretty much the end of it, that this is a governmental deep state conspiracy after demonizing the conspiracy theorists. And, and they still shit on him, right? It's like admitting that this thinking is correct because there were so many conspiracies in this thing, right? I mean, I can't even remember them all these ways that these people lie and cheat and screw each other over, and the secrets they have from each other, and secrets that the family has, and the the boyfriend has from the girlfriend. He betrayed her by spying on her. His first chief of staff, who ends up being drowned in a tub, and she's actually a part of this thing, and she's working him for information, and he doesn't know that, and so he's part of the investigation. They're in a relationship. They're sleeping together, and they're meeting up, and both are on opposite sides of the thing, and he's got his secrets from her, and she has his secrets from him, and they both have secrets from his father, and all these people are involved, and they're all lying pieces of shit, and none of them are redeemable, and somehow it's all truthers' fault. And it's, truthers are taking down America for saying, yeah, this is what you guys are like, and it turns out they're just like this, based in the TV show, and and so this is wonderful, like just 5 stars in terms of truther bashing and just all of it. Okay, so let's do the comments here. Okay, so I put together this final compilation of all the ways that this is a truther bashing thing. I've done this throughout the days. This is day 3, all the stuff from all 6 episodes. And this idea, I was going through it, where he says that Evan Green, people like him, spread their poison online just to make a buck. Like profiting off of you guys being scumbag liars and being conspirators, right? And and doing bad shit isn't as bad as you guys doing bad shit, right? But anyways, here's the compilation.
And you think if you get worked up over some bullshit conspiracy nonsense that...
No, you're starting to sound a lot like those conspiracy nuts.
I actually am short Russian oil.
A hostage.
Known domestic terror organization called the Reapers.
Just open the gates for every conspiracy theorist in America to...
This is one conspiracy theory of his that might not be rooted in fantasy.
They got to him, huh? Is he seeing things?
Who's the idiot now?
All these scumbags love him.
Okay.
Into law, placing an immediate freeze through the weekend on all financial activity.
Country apart, lighting fires just to make a buck. You're a fucking parasite.
I'd like my lawyer now.
As a detainee of this commission, you are not entitled to counsel.
So you're suggesting?
Well, we were secretly designing neurological weapons for the United States government.
Pretending that the Constitution is intact.
Well, what I do mind, though, is the intentional spread of dangerous disinformation.
Evan Green has been released, but he should never have been detained.
That enhanced interrogation techniques were used on television personality Evan Green.
And if you're worried about the death of a autistic sociopath, the rest is becoming truth, and that's all that matters.
We had strong reason to believe the zero-day plot involved actors from inside the government.
With half the country caught up in a fever dream of lies and conspiracy, the other half shouting about pronouns.
If you can remind people what's really important, then maybe they'll tune out all the noise and the bullshit.
Not to mention that clowns like Evan Green, who dole out their poison online and on television.
The public finds out how deep this really went right at this moment. I don't think we survived.
The zero-day attack was a conspiracy led by House Speaker Richard Dreyer. And you think if you get worked up over some bullshit conspiracy nonsense that...
No, you're starting to sound a lot like those conspiracy nuts.
The zero-day attack was a conspiracy led by House Speaker Richard Dreyer.
Okay, so I haven't started this video yet, the part that you've already seen. I watched the end of the show, though, so I know what I'm going to say. I'm just going to do a little warm-up here. I'm going to do these comments after the end of... I can't remember the name of the thing. 0 Day. It really crapped on truthers in ways that the whole thing was, it was so poorly made, but it was the most truther thing, even the last 2 episodes. And so, you've already seen it, though. So, but I did get a couple comments I want to respond to. And, when I respond to comments, negative ones, and I don't get that many, it's usually when people are offering personal opinions about me something to do with me, negative ones, and they're 100% wrong about it. And, one might think that it bothers me, and it doesn't. Like, it bothers me from the standpoint that I'm like, how do you come up with that, right? Like, why would you put that down, write something down like this that just is yeah, there's a ton of information out there. I make long ass fucking videos. I make 2 hours of content a day. And how do you get this stuff wrong? Like, how do you suck so bad at this thing that you're attempting to do in terms of, critiquing me or whatever it is? Like, it's not really anything about me, because it's like you're wrong. It's like some imaginary thing that you've made up, and they're going to write it down. And, like, why wouldn't you be able to figure this thing out before you made the comment, before you typed it into the whatever it is, right? Because it's just like, depressing that this is what you would come up with. I mean, in terms of humanity, like, where humanity's at. And, some of these people, I mean, people who watch my videos regularly and understand, because the way I look at things is different. And it's, I mean, certainly even from truthers and, people who can watch my videos, because most people can't. I mean, it's not that they're, rocket science and I'm talking some technical things that they can't understand. It's just my perspective is so much different than the average American and the average truther that, people don't listen to things that they disagree with, right? Like, people don't want to hear stuff that goes against their worldview, especially if they don't even understand where the person's coming from. And, I have a lot of comments where people just say, I don't understand what you're talking about, right? And so, so if you do understand it, then why would you come up with these specific criticisms? And it's two comments that are very similar. And so you'll know what I'm talking about. Let me just get into the comments here. And so the person here, I got to make this bigger. This came in yesterday, but I've been waiting to do this. So it's like they're treating the symptoms of a zombie, treating the symptoms of a zombie, and money always wins. So that's that video. So I can't remember what's in that video, but someone had a comment about it. You get very taken away by the narratives and the scripts, Paul. There's absolutely nothing real about any of it or any of the characters. They're actors. The Illuminati cards prove 100 times over that none of this is real. Trump is a character played by an actor. Like, you guys know the answer to this, right? Like, the rest of you guys should know what I feel about this thing. I mean, I call it the show. I literally call it the show. And I've said over and over again in the videos, I can't say it every video. I can't explain, the way I view the world in every video. I would expect that people are smart enough to figure it out. You are very taken away by the narratives and scripts, Paul. Am I? Is that what you think? Like, that's your position on this? You felt like you write a comment about it because you think that's where I am with this. I'm taken away by the narratives and the scripts. And so I want to save some of it for the next comment because it's very similar. Let's just go to that comment because I'm going to respond basically to both these at the same time. And I shouldn't have to because you guys already kind of know. Like, you already know what I'm going to say here. This is the person. I realize that this may be my last comment. And this is to, I don't think it's the same video. Trump thinks his MAGA supporters are morons. I realize this may be the last comment I ever leave on your videos. Man, I've been listening for 8 months or so, and while I agree with most of your opinions, here is something I find a complete turnoff. Again, if you did listen to my videos, you would know I don't have a complaint department. Not because I'm perfect, because that's, it's that your complaints are meaningless to the way I do this. Your opinions about what I do here are meaningless to what I do here. They're not affecting it at all. Unless you have something to offer on a subject matter. Something that would be helpful in the future, right? Like, so if you had more information about something that I don't have any expertise in, then your comment is valuable because I will, learn something. But you critiquing me, I'm not going to learn anything from it. I never have. Like, not in the entire time that there's been comment section has there been any time a comment has affected the way I do my job here. The way that your criticism is not, just even with the compliments, I mean, the people say, you're doing a good job. That's good. I mean, it's motivational, but that means I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing, right? But what I've said over and over again, something you complain about, like if somebody saying your videos are too long, and then, I get a number of people say, oh, I love the long videos. So who should I listen to, right? And so all right, my microphone ran out of batteries, and so I lost a bunch of stuff. So, last night I had some things I was going to say, and I went change the batteries, and I usually have batteries in my drawer, so I had to walk and do some things. And I realized there's something I wanted to lead with, which is something I want to talk about here. So, most of these comments, especially ones that are personally directed at me, are complaining about something they would like me to change, right? There's something that they don't like in, my personality or my videos, or, it's coming from a point of view that they can see me the way you look at like a kid, right? You can see something in your kids and people who are less, they're younger than you, and you just have this experience, this life experience, and you look at them. I often talk about how when you were a kid, you never knew how your parents could figure out you were lying, or some, adult could figure out you were lying or something like this, right? Because, you couldn't see the world the way they saw it. They had all this experience and, just comprehension, and, their brain had fully developed, and all the things that happen on your way to adulthood. And, as you grow older, you can see issues, and you try to explain them to your kids. Or when you look at your dogs, I see my dogs sniffing around, and they're, I want them to come with me, and they're stuck in a place. And for a rabbit, I just saw it jump over the fence and it's gone, but they still are smelling it. And I'm like, no, you guys are smelling a rabbit that used to be here, right? But you guys don't know that, and I can't convince you of it. So, like, just get over here, like whatever. And so, there's a level of consciousness where you can look from a superior position, where you're on a higher level. And, some of that comes with maturity, and a lot of it comes from your spiritual work. And you see the world differently. Like, you just, if you ever seen in these sort of movies like this, where somebody goes on a spiritual journey, there's some revelations they have, and, what they saw themselves, what they could perceive the world as a young person, they see it better now, right? So these people write these comments like they've cracked the code, and they can see through my, my incongruities and my issues, and like they're 100% wrong. And there's two things about that. One, you're looking down when you should be looking up. Like there's something where you're not realizing that I'm already on a level beyond what you're saying in the comment, which I'll explain, which you guys pretty kind of know about. But also, telling somebody that they suck and they're wrong and you have a problem with them, it never works. And how have you fucking don't know that by now? Like, how do any of you guys don't know that by now? That telling somebody, I talk about this as I have a master's degree in counseling, getting other people to change to the way that you want them to be, whether it's your kids, whether it's your parents, whether it's your significant other, whether it's some guy on the internet, it doesn't work. And it's really selfish and myopic. And, it's something where you're clueless to how existence works. You're clueless to understand how you work as a person and how other people work and function. That telling somebody you suck almost never works. It almost never has a response you're, getting the other person to stop sucking. And so you're really just trying to hurt their feelings. You're really just trying to make them feel bad. And it's all about you. It has nothing to do with their betterment. It has nothing to do with you. You're, in this case, this person's trying to tell me that they know more than me and they're more evolved, which you get a lot from people. Well, I see through, I'm so much more evolved than you. Then why are you telling me that? Because a person who's more evolved would know that shit don't work. And so this means you're less evolved, because this is about your ego needing to tell somebody else, hey, I'm better than you, right? I know more than you. I'm better than you. And you get so many comments like this. It's a plague on the internet because these comments that are sort of, oh, you suck and I know how you suck and I'm going to tell you how you suck. And you're lucky that I'm doing it. So it's going to be helpful for you because I'm the great knower of things, right? I am the great oracle and I've seen your suckiness and I am going to profess how you suck so you can benefit from my wisdom. Like it's just silly. Like you should be able to understand that doesn't work. And it says something about you. Why do you need to tell other people they suck, right? I'm telling people, I talk about people sucking all the time here. And I'm going to get into Alec Baldwin, someone I've talked about sucking quite a bit. He has this little meltdown, which, is kind of funny. But it isn't for them. I don't expect them to benefit from my videos. It's me pointing out the flaws of humanity, and they're pretty flagrant, and why this system has to collapse and why we need to change collectively. Because these are behaviors that are exhibited by lots of people. Alec Baldwin and Trump are just some of the many narcissists. Our system is we're all narcissistic to an extent because of the system makes you selfish and competitive, right? People don't do things for other people. And so if you were that evolved, you would find a gentler way. Like if your goal was to correct me and help me with my, the issues that you profess to see, right? Or correct anybody else on the internet, you would find a way. You'd pray or find a subtle way. Because telling people they suck does not work. It's just all about you inventing, right? It's about your need. And so let's get back to it here. I got to find the comment. I realize this may be the last comment I ever leave on your videos. Well, the person is, man, I've been listening for 8 months or so. While I agree with most of your opinions, here is something I find a complete turnoff. The spiritual cleansing and meditative work that you have been doing for many years, and which you profess to be engaging, isn't it counterintuitive to spend so much time and energy on one spiritual path while clearing out your negative to make way for the positive? But in the end, you're making videos highlighting the negative, almost dwelling on them, seems to be an oxymoron. Okay, so this is a two-parter. I had to take 2 screenshots. This is the length of this person, having to be wrong about something, right? Which, both these comments very similar. They're very close to each other, even though they were different videos. I mean, think about it. You're doing this work to have a clean spirit and no worries on your consciousness, and you're spending all your time flustered about politics, and there's 3 emojis with somebody laughing so hard they're crying. So, you guys get where this is going. And so here I have to, I got this, there it is. I know you're lavishly attracted to this beast system that is YouTube, and it's evident that your daily video uploads. It's evident with your daily videos. You're not alone. There are millions and millions of people clawing their way out of the daily grind force and trying to stay home, making videos in order to earn income. I tried making videos, and in the end, I felt it was counterintuitive to everything that brought me joy and true meaning in life. YouTube is a machine that grinds people up, adds a little dystopian cat video for flavor, then drops you into a furnace for your energy to keep the YouTube Google system going. You're saying this is probably your last comment, which means you're going to watch more of my videos. And so you're coming here to watch videos. Like you're so much above YouTube, and you see through the whole YouTube thing, and yet you're leaving a comment on YouTube. Again, peace to you and everyone that watches you, and everybody that wants peace in their lives probably seeks it instead of magnetically attracting such negative content on the internet. Okay, so to both these people, the only response to them personally is you're fucking welcome, because I can't explain this every time I make a video. I can't explain all the different layers of the way I look at things. And I've said this to people before. Some videos I'm just going to make like I'm just talking about the official story. You guys know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I mean, you should know it. Like, it's depressing when people don't know it when they claim to watch a lot of videos. both these people claim to watch a lot of videos, and they can't see it, and they're trying to see it through a superior, where they're superior to me in some way, or superior to you, or all of us in YouTube, and they're just like the best, and we should bow down before their level, and yet they're like so limited in their ability to comprehend what's going on in my videos, right? Because I've said this so many times, I'm only going into this subject matter for you all. If I just talked about, well, there's a couple of things here, and I recently said this in a video, that where I am spiritually, by doing this system for years, the Sajmark system, if I talk from that place, most people wouldn't be able to understand it, and it's of no interest to them. And so, I've told the story over and over again, and I have to tell it again here because I've decided to read these comments, and I have to make these people look bad because it gives me some joy to do that, right? But for this person's response that me doing these videos every day is causing me internal grossness without understanding how the cleaning process works, right? And so some scars are formed. Like what he's talking about is some scars, and not knowing what some scars are, not knowing how they work, and seeing it from your level of existence without any spiritual knowledge or any kind of like knowledge of how this system works, the accumulation of impressions in your internal system, right? That's what the samskaras are. That's what get cleaned in the Sajmark system. So everything that you think, see, or do that forms an impression leaves a samskara. There's two ways to engage in life without accumulating more samskaras and more grossness. There's just going to be some superficial stuff just from life in general, right? But other than that, there's two ways to not have samskaras form. The first way is you're detached, which I am, because I don't give a shit about any of this stuff. Like, I'll get into that in a moment, right? And so I don't care about it. It doesn't affect me, almost, never. Like, I just don't get affected by it because I don't care about it, because I think the system's going to collapse, and I didn't care about it when I was younger. And so, I was detached from American life as a kid. Like, I didn't experience things like my friends. Like, I didn't have the same American experience. I was into sports. I was into these things. Here's an example of that. And so I was like 16 or 17 years old. And as a young man, the swimsuit issue of Sports Illustrated was like this thing. Like, it was like the Bible of, like, in terms of, women and posing in these bikinis and things, right? And, there was this idea that that's the kind of woman that I would marry, like, or some kind of thing like that. That's the kind of woman that I would like to be with. These were what you were given as from the beastly system, as these supermodels, these beautiful women in movies and TV shows and things like that, right? The official beastly system said that physical beauty, what was considered physical beauty, again, in different civilizations, it's there's things that are, I mean, like, they would wrap women's feet up in the different Asian countries, I think China, where they would, break their feet and make their feet smaller. And, I mean, horrible shit they would do because that was considered beautiful. Like, it's just an arbitrary thing. People do things, piercings in some countries and, cultures. It's a cultural thing. Your culture tells you what beauty is and what you should be attracted to. And beauty is the, barometer of, the most important thing, and it just fucking isn't, right? And so, and as a kid, I'm, whatever, I'm just thinking the way I'm going along with the indoctrination that I'm given, right? And so there was like an HBO special, and it was an in-depth look at the models who were swimsuit models in some Sports Illustrated issue. And I was like watching it like, wow, I got to find out about these girls, like this, how they think, all this stuff. And I was appalled by them. Like, I was fucking like, oh my God, they're nothing like me. They're like a different species. When I heard them talk, like, I'm like, they were older than me. And I'm like, well, yeah, there's like whatever illusion I had about these women, these airbrushed women in these fucking bikinis in this Sports Illustrated, whatever it was, right? I remember one of my best friends was going to marry Christy Brinkley, right? Like it was this thing, you had this. Christy Brinkley was like one of these models, and then when I heard them talk, I'm like, oh, they're nothing like me. Like I couldn't even have a conversation with them, and I realized as a young person that was like all bullshit, right? It was, this illusion, and that I had to rethink what was important to me in terms of who you're going to marry and just your associations in general, or friends, or whatever it is. And it's what's on the inside that's important. And so, I had a sense of things. It took me a long time to understand what what resonates with me because the system didn't. And I didn't have like a backup, I didn't have this knowledge, right? And so I didn't care about any of this stuff. I remember going to like a doctor's office and picking up People magazine and reading some shit in, like, young person, like I was, whatever it was, my teens, my 20s, whenever, I looked at those things. And I'd be like, oh my God, this is for morons. There's a Bob Gothwaite joke where he said, so I was sitting down to watch Entertainment Tonight, and he grabs his head and pretends to move his head over and put it on a table. He goes, I won't be needing this, right? Like all this stuff about celebrities and entertainment, it never appealed to me. Like I don't care about. I don't care about celebrity culture at all. I don't care about any of these things. I don't care about politics. If I didn't make these videos, I wouldn't watch it at all. And if I choose not to cover something, I don't watch it. Like I don't, I'm not interested in it. And there was a point where I was in India and my marriage was crapping out and I had to, do this show, do this, whatever here. I always felt like it was divine instruction because I have something to offer, which is the knowledge that the pursuit of divinity within you and the connection to God within is the solution to the problem we see in front of you. But saying that to people isn't going to get it out there. You have to connect to people where they are. So I had to dive down. I had this moment where I was like, all right, you got to do this I was looking at this as much as I could as a businessman, and I'm not a businessman. And I was looking at my videos and going, well, what are the videos that are, making the most money? I had to make this like a job. And the videos that are reaching the most people. And it was the ones with celebrity culture. And I was like, holy fuck. I don't want to do this every day. Because I was making a celebrity video like once a month. And it was kind of interesting, and I didn't mind doing it. Whatever it was that I was looking into. But, in terms of where people are at, and I can't even make those videos anymore. Those kind of videos, the Full House videos, the Michelle Obama videos, some of the videos that got millions of views. I just can't do that. Like I can't, I've done it so long and, I have to do things in a different way. Like I can't dive into that cesspit because it's just boring and you can't make the same shit over and over again, right? And YouTube doesn't promote them anyway. And so thankfully I don't have to do that. But I've said, I don't make Britney Spears videos for free, but to get out the spiritual message that I have to offer here. And, most people, it's just not going to penetrate. They're not going to care. Maybe on a subconscious level. I have to dive into this cesspit. So it's for you all. Like, I don't care about it. And so since I'm detached from it, it doesn't affect me. I mean, it's gross, it's looking at gross shit and seeing the depravity of humanity and stupidity of humanity. But, you're going to see that anyway, right? The other way that you don't get some scar is you are doing God's work and you are in remembrance of God. You have this idea that God's experiencing this and you're combined, you and God are working together. There's a term called constant remembrance. It's a practice in the Sajmark system where you're thinking that you're not experiencing something that God is. That God is having this experience and He's sharing it with you. You're remembering God all the time. And so if you're doing the work, you're doing your soul's work and you're doing what God told you to do, you're assigned to something, which for me is clearly the case here. I mean, as clear as it could be. You don't form these impressions. But either way, when I first started to do this stuff, I felt it was gross. I had worked with manure. I was a janitor when I was in college. I used to open up a town building and scrub toilets and vacuum and do, dirty work. And, people think farming and homesteading is dirty work. And, I work with cow manure, putting it on an earth oven and things, getting cow poop and putting it in a wheelbarrow and dumping it so it turned into manure for the garden, things like this, right? I've done work that people think is gross, but the grosser work was working with sex offenders as a counselor and working with people's, issues and counseling and being a clinician, working in that field. It's like the filth of human beings. And then also being a preceptor where I would clean, whatever was going on, grossness within people's hearts, doing that work now a little bit, with the gratefulness meditation. And then all these things that are considered dirty. But then just the Hollywood culture, and the thing's so icky. And when I first started making these videos, I was in India and I was going and meditating and getting these sittings, and I was going through my own personal cleaning. There's just this big samskara package that was getting cleaned out of my system. This cleaning process, right? And when I was coming back to America, I was like, without having any preceptors to go to get sittings with, and not having the ashram to meditate at, in India, there's just a purity. There's it's a filthy country, but the spiritual energy from years, it's this spiritual capital of the world. It's a great place to connect to God, but I mean, it's a material pit right now, right? But underneath, the bones of it is there, and these ashrams where, these like a place, a bridgeway where you could find the divinity within. It's just the energy that was there made it so easy to meditate. And of course, there's all these group meditations and sittings that you could get from preceptors where you could get the cleaning done when samskara, these samskaras would come up. You'd have these periods of time where stuff would just be pulled from your system. And sometimes you needed multiple sittings and things just to process them. And I went through all this cleaning. But when I got back to America, it was fine. Like, I was able to make these videos, and I was so detached from the whole thing, and I'm detached now. And so, you're welcome. Like, to everybody who's benefited from the spiritual teachings and some of the things that I do here, that I'm willing to dive into the cesspit and descend down to a lower level of consciousness because I've evolved. It's been 10 years since I've been doing this as a job. I started, the YouTube channel popped in 2014, right at December, right around the time that Master Charji died. I had some viral videos, and I've been doing this a full-time job now for 10 years. And my spiritual evolution and my evolution as a YouTuber has, I'm just kind of over the whole stuff. Stuff I didn't care about in the first place. And so, all these people that say, like this first person said, I'm buying into the system. Well, I don't care about it. Well, it's all an illusion. Life on Earth is illusion. It's called Maya, right? That's how this idea that we're in three-dimensional bodies, it's not what we are internally as a soul. It's like we're in a video game. So the whole thing is just, it's a joke. I never, even before I did spirituality, I had that sense of it, right? That this isn't all that serious. But sometimes I cover it like how normal people would see it, or just I cover the official story. I cover Trump on surface level because, there's different ways of viewing it. There's always different levels. And it should be obvious to people. Like, it's just, if you watch enough content, you should be able to get it. And it would be helpful to get it because it would be helpful for everybody to be detached from things. It's not that serious. The system's going to collapse, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it. And when it does collapse, it's a good thing. It's part of a divine plan to get rid of a system that's taking us in the wrong direction. And so all this stuff is meaningless. And so the fact that I go in and dive into this cesspit every day so that you can benefit from the teachings that God wants you to have, because it's really me serving God and you benefiting from that service, right? And this is, what I've been tasked to do. Where, other people who have reached some spiritual level that's available in the Sajmark system, they don't have to dive into this cesspit. A cesspit that, most of us don't care about because it's all illusion, right? It's all Maya. Everything that I watch, and some things like turn on the TV, I watch some news. I'm like, all right, I can make a video about this. And pretty much it's just random. Like, it's whenever I eat lunch and whatever they're talking about when I eat lunch or when I eat breakfast, right? These are, the times. And so, it's just kind of random, right? It's just whatever. And then the big subjects that people want me to cover and people send me stuff. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do that, or no, I'm not, right? And if it's no, I'm not, then I don't pursue it. Like I'm not interested in. I only watch things that I'm going to cover here. Anything that that is something I have to learn about and know about and think about. It's for the purpose of making videos because people need to hear about that shit, right? It's unfortunate that I couldn't just talk about spiritual stuff. And, and of course, weaving the spiritual stuff into the mainstream narrative is helpful for me as well, everybody, looking at it from a spiritual perspective. But, it should be there for everyone to see. And that's the kind of sad part, right? Like, how do you not see that? How do you not, question when you're writing one of these comments that there might be more to my, there's like you're just seeing it as face value and you're accusing me of seeing things at face value, like at the most superficial level. And it's silly. Like, it's just fucking silly. I mean, not being able to go inside and actually look in and think about something. Like, that's what I do here. I penetrate to deeper levels of whatever I'm covering. And sometimes it's it starts off at a superficial level and just referring to what Trump's doing, his character. And of course, I've said this before, they buy into their characters. We don't know how much they're scripted and what there is, but we're all like just playing some sort of this is like a video game. We're in some imaginary video game where nothing that we see is really real. It's all an illusion. It's Maya. Beyond any of the politics and celebrity shit, like everybody's life, it's, we're a soul, right? If you're a soul, that's your real essence. You die, your soul continues. If you believe in a soul. And, whether you believe it or not, it's there. So you have a soul, and, it's either true or not, and it's true. And so if you have a soul, you inhabit a body for a while, you have an experience, you go somewhere else, which is your real existence, and then you come back into a body. And in all that while, your spiritual essence is somewhere else. It's in your body, but it also exists where it naturally exists, in an etheric world beyond the third dimensional reality. And that etheric world, you can move forward and get closer to God. And the more that you move along that path, the more you're changed as what you exhibit as a person. And the farther you go, the less people understand you. And so, for you to understand the bare basic teachings that I provide here, the introductory level teachings for spirituality, and for people who, just hear these things but can't do anything about them now, on a subconscious level, you're absorbing these things, right? Or if you can, dip your toe into the world of this, of connecting to the divinity within you, that would be the benefit, right, that people would get from this. That it has to be presented on a level where, you can't teach physics to kindergartners, right? You can't teach spiritual physics to kindergartners, people who are not even aware that they have God inside them and are, indoctrinated by the material system. And so, like, there are people that have to teach kindergarten, and unfortunately for me, I'm one of them. But, I guess it's, I don't want to say unfortunately. I like this job, and I've learned to enjoy it and whatever it is. But, it should only be seen as that I have to dive into the cesspit and meet people where they're at. And that's my assignment, and I'm grateful for the assignment, and it has benefits, right? Of course, this is the kind of thanks you get. Anyways, let's move on to Alec Baldwin and this other stuff here. So there's one more thing I want to say about this. The Sajmark system, there's a term called non-attachment attachment. And so, you can't be detached in some way that you're aloof. You're to your significant others. Like, you have to be there for them. There has to be affection. And also, you can't run off to an ashram or a monastery or, some temple or whatever it is, monks, where monks go, right? Monastery, whatever it is. And, have a vow of celibacy, the Sajmark system, and renounce your material life. That's considered like cowardice. You have a physical body, and you have a responsibility to contribute to society. They have these sannyasis that wander around begging, and they wear these stripes on their faces like war paint, these things, and they're It's supposed to be spiritual mendicants who, bless you in some way, but they renounce material life. They don't have any possessions. They just wander around homeless. And Babaji said they were a plague on the country of India, the second master of the Sajmark system, because, he said the bird has two wings, needs two wings to fly, a material wing and a spiritual wing. It's kind of a unique perspective where you're supposed to be married, have kids, and have a job and function. All the masters of the system had a job. Your job isn't spirituality, right? Your job isn't to be a spiritual person. That's something that, is your spiritual life is separate from, it's integrated with your material life, but, everything that you do spiritually affects you materially, and your material decisions and interactions affect you spiritually, but they're also separate things. You have to have both, right? You have to have these two things, these two aspects of your existence, a material life where you're interacting, engaging with people and being a part of society, and a spiritual life. But in that spiritual life, in that material life, there's this non-attachment attachment, where you're attached to things in a way that's, you have to be a human being, but you're detached enough where they don't create grossness, this idea of being in constant remembrance, thinking about God, doing your duty for God, focusing on God in those interactions. There's there's a method to it, right? Where you're in the world, but you're not in the world. Charji gave the example of, a whale, and when he was training preceptors, diving to the bottom of the ocean, and it's a mammal, a land mammal that's evolved to be in this ocean, and it comes up for air, takes a deep breath, and then dives back into the ocean. You're diving internally, but you go up, you surface, you deal with your material things, and you dive back into your spiritual condition. And so it's a very beautiful way of living. It's the ideas here, where you're actually living a human life, but also at the same time you're thinking about God, feeling God's love, and you're focused on both things. And then there's a non-attachment attachment. You're grateful for these experiences. You enjoy the things that you enjoy. You suffer the things that you suffer, all with this sense that there's, it's I don't want to say it's, you're always thinking about being illusionary, but it's not the real essence. You're here as like an avatar in a video game, and your soul has created this life for you, and God's created this life for you to evolve spiritually, and not take it seriously, but take it seriously. Not engage with it, but engage with it. These things, all these kind of, these two principles, where it's, there's a lightness to it, right? That you live a normal life, you live a normal material life, but there's also this other thing going on internally, where you're somewhere else and you're connected to the divinity within. And so, it's one of the beautiful teachings of the system, and not to run away from the things that your responsibilities, and you have something to contribute. And in your contribution, you're going to come across people, and they're going to maybe sense something different in you. And they're going to maybe be inspired by you and want to find out what you're doing and these things, instead of, sitting up on some, podium somewhere and giving a lecture about spirituality and these things. That you meet them where they are, and then through the process, you develop some sort of relationship and rapport, and then they want to know how you cope so well. When I worked in my first treatment center job, I was a counselor, and it's a very gross, rough job. You're in the milieu, what they call these kids would go to school every day, and at 2:00 they'd go to their cottage, and then you were with them from 2 to 10 at night, right? And these kids were just messed up, and they had messed up families, and they're institutionalized kids are going to spend most of their probably the rest of their lives in institutions, probably die young, many of them, right? Just dregs of society. Many of them would end up in jail or psych wards and things like this. And they were hard to deal with. They were all on, most of them were on some sort of psychological medications. Most of them had suffered some, horrific forms of abuse, and they acted up. And they would spaz out and freak out, and, there were disciplinary issues, and they were just nightmare people. And they were going to be, nightmare kids are going to develop into nightmare adults, right? And there were restraints, and, the place was a very chaotic. Anybody who's worked in these places, it's, prison-like environment. And right before I got that job, I started doing the Sajmark meditation. I was really into it. And I did the cleaning every night when I went home, and would meditate before work. And so we would come in for a staff meeting on Wednesday. Then we would work our shift, and then we had Thursday, Friday, 2 to 10. Wednesday was wherever the staff meeting was, 1 or 2 or whatever it was, noon to 2 o'clock, and then we'd work our shift. And then we had a double that was 15 hours on Saturday. And we come in Saturday morning at, 7:30 or something like that, 8 o'clock, and then work till 10 or whatever it was. And, by Saturday, you were pretty crunchy. And, it's an intense environment. And my coworkers know that I came in fresh and optimistic and just positive on Saturday morning. And they were all tired and grumpy and, these things. And they were younger than me. And, they started asking. I was like, well, because I do this meditation, right? They could see the effects. They noticed the effects of the meditation had on me. And that I experienced the thing differently than them. That I wasn't affected as much by it and these things. And it was just starting. It was my first year. And I noticed the difference. And I knew that if I wasn't doing this meditation, I could never do this job. Like before I started doing the meditation, I didn't have the capacity to endure this toxic environment. And so, it was a tribute to the Sajmark system. I mean, for me, it was convincing. There's a lot of things that it convinced me of because I was able to do things I wasn't able to do before. I was able to stay in difficult situations. I was able to sustain relationships. I was able to finally, after my third attempt at college, to see that through and get my degree, my BS I dropped out of college twice, and then, I was able to see it through and get my degree in human services, and then eventually my master's degree, and all these things that I endured that I knew beforehand without the system, without the meditation, I couldn't. And so this is a part of it, being detached from life. And my first experience with the meditation was I had this deep laugh, that life is just a joke, all these things, all these ways that people get so serious about everything, and and that life is just, a joke. It's just an illusion, right? It was a deep spiritual experience. I laughed from a deep place, and this is something I kind of felt my whole life. And so, I don't take it seriously, right? I mean, there's things that affect you more than others, and sometimes you get sucked in more than you should, and, you're not detached from it. There's all these things. I mean, there's, you're going to have your lifelong experiences, and there's going to be some things that are really sad, some things that are really happy, but, in general, it's something that there's just, there's something more to life that's beyond our material existence. And when we tune into that, then life gets a lot more tolerable. And, we make more progress, and, we have a real goal, we have a real sense of what we're doing, right? This is the idea of non-attachment attachment. But anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, so this guy, Macron, married to a dude. He's making the symbol here, right? Just like Elon Musk, and it's Trump's symbol. He came in hugging Trump. He was all over Trump. I was going to show you that, but whatever. But this seems a little bit more interesting here. Well, let's watch it.
Mr. President, do you think that Ukraine should give up a part of its territory?
Well, we're going to see. It's a negotiation that's just starting, and they've been fighting, and there's been a lot of land that's been taken. So we'll have to see how that works out. That's part of the negotiation. I will say there was great unity in that room today. We were via Skype or whatever. But
Skype is whatever. It's probably whatever. I don't think does Skype even exist, right?
Great. Tremendous unity today in that room with the other countries.
Just there's so much love in that room, I can't even tell you. I mean, we just broke down, had an orgy. I mean, it was just.
I was very impressed by it.
Territories back. Can they take it back? What they lost in the past years?
That's not an easy thing to do, is it? Right? It's not an easy. It's asking whether or not you can take back the land that they lost. And I say that, yeah. Perhaps some of it, yeah. I hope so. But that's not an easy thing.
It's no. You're giving Russia everything they want.
To do. It's going to be something we're talking about.
Will you convince Vladimir Putin to accept the European troops as peacekeeper, will you think?
Yeah, he will accept that.
He will accept
I've asked him that question.
You talked to him?
I've asked him that question.
Is yes?
going to lift the block on the
Because he's not, look, if we do this deal, he's not looking for more war. He doesn't mind, but I've specifically asked him that question. He has no problem with it.
Is France going to lift the block on the $300
billion in frozen Russian assets in Belgium. France has opposed unfreezing it to pay Ukraine and compensate the U.S. for its support. Is France going to lift its opposition to that?
This is, we speak about frozen assets. We already used them to back precisely the loans negotiated at the G7. And it's part of the sanctions, so it will depend on the follow-up of the discussions. But clearly, we respect international law. It's just frozen assets now. You can take the proceeds of the frozen assets, but you cannot take the assets themselves. Because
you can't take the assets themselves. You just can't take their shit. You got to, give it back at some point. You got to unfreeze them.
It's not respecting international law, and we want to respect international law.
How is one different than the other? If you can take the proceeds from it, how can you not?
Because it's very different. You keep the assets, you take the proceeds because they are paralyzed in a certain way. You take the proceeds during the wartime, but you keep the assets, and it's...
You take their fucking, the things that they make off of their assets that should be theirs. You take that because you're frozen their assets.
Part of the negotiation at the end of the war. Because, this war costed all of us a lot of money. And this is the responsibility of Russia, because the aggressor is Russia. So at the end of the day, this frozen asset should be part of the negotiation, all in all.
Will France support the U.S. being compensated?
I support the idea to have Ukraine first being compensated.
Look at Trump here, again with his hands down here.
Because they are the ones to have lose a lot of their fellow citizens and being destroyed by these attacks. Second, all of
sounds a lot like Pepe Le Pew.
who paid for could be compensated, but not by Ukraine, by Russia, because they were the one to aggress.
Again, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank.
This is the thing right here. To be frank,
we paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through like the U.S.
Trump's calling bullshit.
Loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money. To be clear, we have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan because this is not our belonging. So they are frozen. If at the end of the day in the negotiation we will have with Russia, they're ready to give it.
See, Trump does not like being corrected.
To us, super. It will be loan at the end of the day, and Russia will have paid for that.
If you believe that, it's okay with me.
It's okay if you believe it because it's the truth. I don't know this guy. We know this guy's a lying piece of shit. We know this guy's, just because he's the leader of France, he's an international politician, he's a lying piece of shit. So there's no way to tell, and I don't care, enough to look into it. Either way, I'd never get to the bottom of it.
But they get their money back, and we don't, and now we do. But, that's only fair.
We just choose to disagree here.
Is it the one that pays everybody back? Are they the aggressor?
Well, we're negotiating everything, and everything's on the table. And
everything's on the table.
We can get some land back, and we'll see about a lot of different things. And we're going to be making a little speech and say a few words in a little while.
That's what that little speech is, a few words, a little speech, short little words of speeches.
We'll have another meeting, a luncheon meeting, and we'll see you in about 2 hours. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Boom. All right, so look at these guys. Marco Rubio, look at this. What's happened to his fucking face here? And that guy might be your president at some point. So the Hammer guy covered this. Here he is, the Hammer guy.
Well, Donald Trump made history.
Donald Trump. He starts everything with Donald Trump.
Well, Donald Trump.
Well, Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump. Trump. Like that's all he says is Trump.
Made history today. And so today became a day that will live in infamy.
No, it's not.
In presidential history, because today, Donald Trump formally rejected the position that every American president has held since Franklin Delano Roosevelt masterminded the American victory in World War II. Leader of the free world.
Boom. Just really make this melodramatic. And it's just Monday for Trump, right?
That is what Franklin Roosevelt
or Sunday
turned the job of the presidency into during World War II. Every subsequent president until Donald Trump fulfilled that role, especially at the United Nations.
Boom. Big stuff here.
The United Nations began in the imagination of President Roosevelt.
Or, the Rockefellers.
While President Roosevelt was making the key strategic decisions leading to victory in
Look at this piece of shit.
World War II, he was also planning the aftermath of the war. He was planning the peace. That's the way he talked about it.
That's the way he did. He did that's how he rolled.
During the war, he sometimes referred to America and its allies in the war as the United Nations.
No way. Fuck, that guy was brilliant, huh?
He didn't live to see his design of the United Nations come true. But when the United Nations was organized after World War II, it was basically the Franklin Roosevelt design. And every day at the United Nations throughout its history, the American president's ambassador to the United Nations always stood on the side of freedom.
Boom. On the side of freedom.
The United States of America in the United Nations voted with the free nations of the world against the cruelest dictatorships in the world, which almost always meant voting against the Soviet Union.
It is exactly. If you don't vote against the Soviet Union, you're not really a part of the United Nations.
In the 21st century, as Russian President Vladimir Putin began turning the Russian government into a dictatorship again, the United States leadership of the free world at the United Nations meant standing against Russian aggression.
Boom. That's how they rolled.
Since Russia invaded Ukraine, exactly 3 years ago on this day, the United Nations passed 6 resolutions against the Russian attack on Ukraine.
Nutless resolutions that had no bearing, unless there were sanctions. Then some Russian kids starved.
And the United States voted with the free world against the Russian war on Ukraine.
No way. The free world against Russia.
Every single time.
Every time. That's what they did. But not today. Fucking not today, boys and girls.
Until today.
The entire world is watching.
The United Nations once again today approved a resolution condemning Russia's war against Ukraine, and for the first time in history, the United States did not stand on the side of freedom in the United Nations.
No way, fucking way. This is going to be a day of infamy. Like, I'm going to remember where I was when I found out, like right here, I'm sitting in my bed listening to this fuck. And I'm going to remember this, that this is the day that's going to live in infamy. It's, what is it, like Tuesday or some shit? What, around 1 o'clock, 12 something, 12:30? Boy, I'm stunned by this development.
Nations. The United States, for the first time in history, voted with the dictator against the free world.
No fucking way. Say it again.
Donald Trump voted with Vladimir Putin.
Donald Trump, say it a different way.
United Nations. And so it's official. It really is.
It really is. It's totally fucking official. Right at this moment, it's official. A day that will live in infamy.
As of today.
You know how I know it's going to live in infamy? Because nobody else is talking about it. This is the first I've heard of it. Nobody else is talking about this.
If there's a leader of the free world, it is not the President of the United States.
Who is that president? Say his name.
It might be the President of France, Emmanuel Macron.
Oh, look at them. Look at these guys. Look at these guys.
Who played an important role in presidential history.
Look how happy he is. Oh, my God. Me and Trump, we're buddies.
Today, making Donald Trump the first president in history.
Look, don't touch his knee. You touched his knee. Don't touch another man's knee. What's up with you guys? What do you think, he's Barack Obama?
To be interrupted and corrected by an ally when the President of the United States was lying. And lying.
Boom. Lying big time.
About that ally.
Boom.
General Charles de Gaulle, who became the president of France after World War II.
Oh, he looks like a real fucking winner.
May have been.
Where can you get a mustache like that? I don't know. Hitler?
The most egotistical elected president anywhere in the world. Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt couldn't stand de Gaulle during World War II. But they knew they had to deal with him.
They had to deal with that guy.
And they never had public disagreements with General Charles de Gaulle. Emmanuel Macron may be one of the least egotistical French presidents in history.
Yeah, he looks totally not egotistical. That dude is like dick slapped him every night he's married to.
Today, it was the mild-mannered French president who had to interrupt the blustering president of the United States when the president of the United States was lying.
He was fucking lying right through his teeth right after this day of infamy.
And it fell to the French president to correct the American president.
No way. I saw that. I was like, holy shit, this is 2 days of infamy right back to back.
In a way we have never seen an American president corrected before by another head of state or by anyone.
We've never seen that shit before. It's never happened.
Donald Trump did his...
We just saw it. You know what? You can go back. I could show you the clip. But there's a time where Joe Biden's meeting with all these guys at G5 or G7, one of those fucking things. And Joe Biden is just fucking out of it, like the whole time. And then he was saying, you didn't say he said to Boris, whatever the fuck his name, the guy was in charge, the Prime Minister of England. He said, you didn't say this guy's name. He goes, no, I did say this guy's name. So we saw him get corrected in public. That was probably one of many times that Joe Biden was just talking, because he's out of it, because he's got dementia, right? So that's a lie. You just got caught lying, bro.
Standard lie about Europe's aid to Ukraine. The lie that Europe has loaned money to...
Let me find that thing here. Let's see if I can find that. The title of this video is Boris Johnson Corrects Joe Biden.
Just say how pleased I am to welcome those who have just joined us, bringing some pretty spectacular weather with them. Prime Minister Modi, President Ramaphosa, President Moon, in just a minute. And the President of South Africa. And the President of South Africa, as I said earlier. Oh, you did? I certainly did.
So, remember he put his fists up. The President of Africa, you didn't say that guy. Yeah, I already did. You weren't paying attention. You've seen senile fuck, right? And that whole trip was a debacle. Joe Biden was just gone. So they're laughing at him. Fucking, he doesn't even know they're laughing at him.
Right, so I'll go over that again. Let me tell you, we're delighted.
He just told him to shut the fuck up.
I'm glad to say we're joined by Prime Minister Modi of India, who's on the line.
So yeah, boom. So, you got caught lying, bro. You didn't remember that? I did. And I don't give a shit about this stuff. So that's never happened before. The American president's never been corrected. We know just from that incident. I don't know how many times they've been corrected, right? I'm sure they've corrected George W. Bush all the time.
To Ukraine, and it's a loan, and Ukraine has to pay it back. Donald Trump became the first American president in history fully humiliated on the world stage by instantly getting caught and corrected in his lie.
Okay. He didn't look humiliated. I mean, Donald Trump is lying all the fucking time. I'm sure that he's exaggerating this, and I don't trust the French president either. It's up to debate, right? You can't trust Donald Trump just makes shit up, we know, all the time. Like he faked a freaking assassination attempt. I don't think he gets humiliated. He doesn't like to be corrected because he's, thin-skinned. I think if he's the guy who made fun of his hands, it'd be worse. But you can't call it being humiliated. It's silly. It wasn't that big a deal.
Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid.
To be frank,
60% of the total effort, and it was through.
We paid 60%, and you guys paid less.
Like the U.S., loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money. To be clear,
real money.
We have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan because this is not our belonging. So they are frozen. If at the end of the day, in the negotiation we will have with Russia, they're ready.
Okay, so we saw all this shit.
He actually reached out, President of France reached out, grabbed the arm of the American president to stop him from telling a lie.
Boom, he did. He fucking did that. You see that shit? I mean, it was epic. It was so humiliating.
France and the rest of the countries of Europe. So Donald Trump's response to being corrected.
Oh, there it was. Do you see this shit? Humiliation right fucking there.
Lie?
It wasn't humiliated when he rubbed his fucking inner thigh. That wasn't humiliating. When he grabbed his arm.
Was to simply tell the lie again.
Okay, he said, okay.
They get their money back. When President Macron finished speaking, Donald Trump just told the lie again. So on the day when Donald Trump officially sinks the presidency on the international stage lower than it has ever been.
Boom. It's so low right now. It's fucking unbelievably low. So I'd say Trump 12 more times. You're really kind of obsessed with Trump, bro? Okay, so, whatever. This is just another day. Like, this is nothing. It's not fucking going to live in infamy. Okay, so I asked Gemini, try advanced Gemini. They have a fucking advanced Gemini and I didn't even fucking know about it? Fuck you guys. How am I just hearing about this? I updated my iPhone and now, like, when I ask Siri something, the thing lights up like it's on Star Trek or some shit. Fucking crazy. How much has America, given to the Ukraine? This is what's good about Siri. They get it. Given to the Ukraine for war, and how much has Europe? So here, $75 billion, and then another $100 billion. So 175. That's less than what Trump is saying. And Europe has given $100 billion or more. So that seems to be, based in this. I mean, this is getting from the official story, right? From the official story, there's more dead Russians than Ukrainians, and we know that isn't true, right? They're making shit up. But, it's not like either one of these guys is being honest. I don't obviously trust Trump. Trump just fucking makes shit up. And he just, doesn't expect you're going to fact check him, especially his fans, people believe in him. And you're not going to trust that fucking French guy, right? Like, he's, they're both lying pieces of shit. And so there's no humiliation here. It's just silly. I mean, the guys were like, they were very touchy-feely, and it was kind of gross. But the whole thing is weird. It costs $20 a month for this piece of shit for upgraded Gemini. So there's a student discount. But, $20 a month for this, right? So no upgrade for me. Okay, so ideas come to me when I meditate, walk, or drive. Those are the times where I get most of my inspiration. Ideas and jokes and things come to me while I'm doing these videos, but, it's sometimes when I walk away from it and I think about it, right, these things come to me. So, like, more, like, deeper level thoughts and more analysis. And there's some funny stuff about these two things with, first to do with the hammer guy. I went for a drive. I had to go get some food. I had to go to the store, and then I took my dogs for a walk. And, the hammer guy, every time I've watched the hammer guy, he's hammering Trump. He's saying something about Trump, right? He's obsessed with Trump. He says his name. He always says Donald Trump and Donald Trump and Donald Trump and Donald Trump. He always says the full name. Never President Trump or former President Trump. All Donald Trump. And the guy is constantly saying big things about this is the worst thing he's ever done. And, oh, my God, so embarrassing. And his audience, if they watch him on a regular basis, let's say they watch him twice a week. He's on 5 nights a week. They've heard all of this stuff, and they probably watch other people hammering Trump. And the liberals and the Democrats are kind of numb to Trump. They're not freaked out like they used to be. I mean, there's people freaked out about certain things, but for the most part, they're not nearly as freaked out as they were in the first term. And, we know the guy lies all the time. Like, just recently, these are a couple of his most recent lies. He just says stupid shit. Let me play those 2 memes here.
In that process, we identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs. How about that? In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Okay, so I searched Macron, right? I've never searched him before. So this is Google's recommendations. I searched on YouTube, but, this is a recommendation. Macron interrupts Trump. That's trending right now. Macron height because he's short. And then his wife, right? His wife, this dude right here. Now, I'll find out how much older she is than him. But looks like a dude, right? And, there's a lot of people think that this is a dude. But strange, weird hairdo, right? Was that a wig? What the fuck is that, right? And so, and much older than him, right? I think maybe she was his teacher or some kind of shit like that. A weird relationship. And so, looks, kind of dudeish there. See if we can blow that one up. Open. No. Whatever, right? Possibly a dude. Definitely much older than him. Kind of a weird thing. She's his former teacher and 25 years older than him. And so, definitely a ghoul, possibly a dude, right? And so, this guy, the Hammer guy, is making it sound like Trump is the only embarrassment. These politicians are all weird, and nobody trusts any of them. They might trust one more than the other. They might say Joe Biden at least is handled. They might say, like the Trumpers will say that Donald Trump is just using his bullshit for negotiation, because Trumpers know that Trump is a liar at times, and they see through his bullshit to some extent. I mean, some more than others. Like any other group, there's going to be some who have more perceptual abilities, and some of them know he lies, but they're just going to rationalize his lies and say he's playing chess instead of checkers. But nobody's going to say that all these politicians are honest and can be trusted, and they don't come out and just bullshit. Trump's known for it, but it's not an embarrassment at this point. It's just a hallmark of his character. And so nobody should ever trust anything that Trump says, nor they should trust anything any other politician says. And I'm sure the French people aren't like, oh yeah, Macron's totally trustworthy. It's just silly. And to say that Trump has been called out and embarrassed, and the whole thing with the Ukraine, if we decide not to pay money to NATO, then those fucking guys are on their own, right? If we decide to pull out, we have all the leverage. If Trump is not bluffing and he just decides we're not going to, do all the NATO shit you want us to do, because any war, America's going to take the lion's share. We have the biggest military. And so, especially a war with Russia. So, it's just silly. But Macron correcting Trump isn't the weirdest thing that happened. It's the touch of the leg. So let me show you. I got a better version of it where it's not being blocked by the banner underneath. Let me show you that.
Of building this lasting peace.
I just want to tell you a little story. So we were at the Eiffel Tower having dinner with your wonderful wife and with my wonderful wife, and we came out and he started speaking the French deal. And we didn't have an interpreter, and he was going on and on and on, and I was just nodding, yes, yes, yes. And he really sold me out, because I got back the next day and I read the papers. I said, that's not what we said. He's a smart customer, I will tell you that. Sure.
So this is the most fucked up thing that happened. Look, him grabbing his knee here, right? Grabbing Trump's frickin' knee. This is the thing that's most disturbing, right? See, if this was a female, if Kamala Harris had won presidency and this guy's meeting with her, he wouldn't have put his hand on her knee, right? He wouldn't have put his hand on Kamala Harris's frickin' knee and her inner thigh and rubbed it like he did, this freak, right? The reason why he wouldn't do that is because it's sexual. So if something you wouldn't do to a woman, if you do it to a man, it's still sexual. It's still weird. It shows a level of intimacy. I mean, how many men would feel comfortable with another man just putting his hand on your knee? We saw this with Obama and his lover there at the basketball game. I showed you that. When a man puts his hand on another man's leg, it's a sexual thing, right? And so this is the weirdest thing that happened. And let me go through it here. Let's watch the video clip again. So Trump says that Macron comes out, and I slow this down. And he does that French deal, and then he gets touched on the arm, and they do this weird handshake. He's laughing. Look at Macron. He's laughing, whatever. Trump leans in a little bit of bro stuff. He's saying, yeah, it's a great story. And boom, let me rub your fucking inner thigh here, bro. Right? So here's the thing, right? When I was in India, some dude grabbed my hand and walked me across the street. Some person who does the meditation. And apparently dudes do that there. I saw it before, thought it was weird, and didn't feel super comfortable about it. But, I let it go. I'm a person who not really into having people touch me. Like I'm not like, it's not like a phobia or something I freak out about. I just notice it, right? Like I can tolerate it, but it's an irritant. Like I have sensitive skin, and I'm aware of people being very close to me, even if they're not touching, and especially people I don't know. Like I don't love crowds or those kind of things. And, you can just sort of, I can like just forget about it, right? Just, well, this is what I have to do and tolerate it. But I'm sensitive to it, right? It's not like it's traumatizing, but something like that. But I just don't love it, right? And so, I have to gauge whether I want to create an uncomfortable situation or speak up about it, right? Like I have to decide whether I'm going to call somebody out on it, especially if it's a cultural thing that they're just used to doing. And so, I'm like, all right, this is going to take 2 seconds, and I'll just, the problem is that once you tolerate it, you don't speak up, and you do what Trump did. There's like, I think, 4 legitimate ways to deal with some dude touching your leg like this Macron did to Trump, right? You could ignore it, but if you ignore it, that means that you're consenting to future leg touching, right? It might even imply that you're kind of digging it, and so it might encourage the behavior, right? And so, not speaking up, Trump not speaking up, means that him and Macron are on leg touching, inner thigh rubbing, knee grabbing basis. Like that's their relationship now. There's no boundary there, and they're free to grab each other's knees, whenever they see fit. And so you kind of want to avoid that kind of thing. So he could have slapped his hand away, or just like say, put his hand down like, hey, that's not cool. Probably maybe that's the best option, but it might not send strong enough message. He could slap the guy, or he could confront him verbally. And the way he needs to do it is probably more aggressive than actually slapping the guy, right? Because if he verbally says something, it's got to be a strong enough message that you think this is weird as fuck, right? There needs to be like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck? There needs to be like a strong, disgusted gaze, sort of an aggressive gaze, looking at his hand and looking at him, and then saying, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you putting your hand on my knee and touching my inner thigh? Like, is that what you guys do in France? Is this culturally acceptable behavior in France? We don't do this shit here, right? Guys don't grab each other's knees here in America. That might be something you guys do in France. Maybe that's why the Germans like totally went through you in World War II. You guys are too busy grabbing each other's knees. But here in America, we don't do that shit, right? Like you're in America, I'm a Republican. You don't do that shit. I don't know if you got the memo. I saw your Olympic opening ceremony. And it seems like that's the kind of thing you guys are into. But we just had an election, and the American people gave a strong referendum on the they-them shit, and we ain't buying into it. Get your hand off my fucking knee, bro. Something along those lines, right? But it's much more substantial an interaction. Like what's more, I don't want to say shocking, but has more oomph in it. Macron correcting Trump about his, how much money they both spent, or Macron grabbing Trump's knee and inner thigh. Like, which do you think is more a bigger story? What do you think has more bang for the dollar? But unless Trump said something, and Trump didn't even seem to notice. Maybe Trump's just a big, likes to have his knee grabbed. Who knows? It's a Stormy Daniels shit. Anyways, let's wrap this thing up with Elon. Okay, so I'm going to cover this Doge thing with here.
This morning, federal government employees are waking up to yet another new directive from Donald Trump and Elon.
Oh, amazing picture. Like, I have this ability where I just stop on these amazing pictures, like when I'm doing these screenshots and things. Some of you guys are aware of it. Where the person looks fucked up. Like I don't know why. Sometimes I have to do it on purpose. Like I'll look for something, but usually it's just I just happen to click on the right moment. It's like some weird ability I have. And whoever did this, excellent. Like these two, this is a wonderful image.
Elon Musk, after a day of mass government confusion. Overnight, the deadline passing from that weekend email sent by the Office of Personnel Management at Musk's instruction, asking for them to list 5 things they've accomplished or face termination. Some government agency leaders, including Trump's allies, telling their staff they shouldn't answer Other departments telling employees to respond, but not to reveal classified information.
Well, why would they do that? Like, I mean, are you seriously thinking that they would do that? Like, that's fucked. Like, you would have to tell them, hey, don't let any classified information in this email that's going to be one of like 100,000 emails.
While Trump praised Musk's actions.
There was a lot of genius in sending it.
The office that...
Okay, so that's I saw Trump's full quote. And what Trump said was what Elon Musk said, is that there's a lot of these fake employees, people who have created some sort of, the person's either retired or they're still getting a paycheck but doing no work. They're like they're like totally scamming. And if that's the case, if there's thousands of non-existent federal employees, well, things are way worse than we thought, right? And other people, they're still collecting a paycheck, but they're doing no work. And if it's that bad, that should be really concerning, because, if our federal government is that incompetent, and, I don't believe it's very competent now, but that kind of incompetence where there's tens of thousands of fake accounts where people are collecting money and doing no work. And so what he was saying was those people won't be able to respond. But let's say you had 5 fake accounts, like you're receiving 5 paychecks from the government, and you're some fake, you got these fake accounts and you're not doing any work. Wouldn't you go check those emails and respond, right? If that's all it took to verify that you're, like, this is one of those things where they're verifying whether you're a bot or not, right? So it's not going to be effective. I mean, I like this kind of stuff because it's something new. It's controversial. My brother had said we were coming out of the state job, and my brother was working. He worked at a town, a town in Connecticut, the town he grew up in. He worked at the Parks and Rec department, and oftentimes he was getting paid for doing 3 different jobs at the same time. And then he started working at the state, and he would just leave. And like he was leaving, and the other guys fucked off. Like, they didn't do their job. They go hide and they do stuff. It was at some place for, kids who, teenagers, I think, or adults that were, had mental issues, like had some disabilities, mental disabilities. And he worked as maybe like, I don't know, janitor or something. And everyone would just sit around and not work because it was a state job and they do very little work. But nobody left. So my brother started to leave, and then everyone else started to do it because they copied my brother. I mean, this is kind of scummy, stuff we're talking about. And my brother said he had a meeting, and he brought a bag of jelly beans. And he said, here, like, he gave one guy like 4 jelly beans, and another guy 5, another guy 2, and whatever. He said, look, you got 2 jelly beans, you got 5 jelly beans, you got 4 jelly beans, but you all got jelly beans. And if you start whining about how much jelly beans other people have, then none of us will have jelly beans. And remember, I'm the guy who, without me, you guys wouldn't have any jelly beans. I'm the one who, had the idea to create jelly beans, right, by just leaving, right? He said we need to communicate. We have to coordinate this thing so there's at least some people here. We need to cover for each other. And we all can. So you develop this scam network of people getting paid on the state's dime. And, that stuff goes on all the time. He was telling me that there was a guy who was stealing toilet paper. And the guy was stealing, like, cases of toilet paper. He would load up his truck every day he worked with toilet paper. And they caught him, and they fired him. And he sued him, and he won. And his defense was, they never told me I couldn't steal toilet paper. That was his defense, right? And so my brother and I, like, he went to pick up a paycheck or something. And we're driving by these guys, and they're just standing around. And, they were like doing agriculture. And he yelled out, I mean, loud enough for them to hear, lean on each other till the shovels get here. And, there's this element of getting a state job or a governmental job and just, milking it, and there's no oversight. So that stuff always exists. But you're talking about tens of thousands of people getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of them $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 a year for doing nothing. And then these people are now working at home, which, of course, is better, in some ways than coming into the office. I mean, certainly for the people, then there's real problems here. But if they're not smart enough just to answer this email on their fake accounts, I mean, it's not a hard thing. It's not a hard system to beat, right?
It sent that email following up Monday to say it's voluntary, but then a new order from Musk Monday night, giving employees more time, but making it clear they better comply. Failure to respond a second time will result in termination, Musk posted on his platform X. Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican from Alaska, a state with a significant number of federal workers, said the email was intimidating employees.
There is a way to do this that is proper, that is...
Okay, so, you know, I don't care. Like, what can I say about it? I mean, like, I know this kind of thing exists because I just told you stories. Like, I think we all know about it. There's people who actually work hard in the government. There are people who are, you know, conscientious. I mean, you know, I don't know. Like, you know, I mean, there's no way to, you know, it's not going to make a fucking difference. It's kind of entertaining. And, you know, but, I mean, Elon Musk got $20 million of money from the government for his satellite thing and many more millions for his cars and, you know, governmental taxpayer money. And, you know, like all these guys get grants and things from, you know, they're all scamming the government. I mean, Trump's one of the best, I'm sure, you know, based on getting $2 billion from the Saudi Arabians at monetizing shit. That's one of the things that Trump is good at, is monetizing his presidency. Much better than Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and they were pretty good, right? And so, you know, I mean, they're all stealing from the government one way or another. And so, yeah, you'll get some people, but this doesn't seem like a very effective plan. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's part of Bible Death Reporting for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.